Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey, if you wanted to ask me any questions about Knowledge for Men or any challenges you currently have and want me to help you break through, then check out my live weekly talks at kfmlive.com, where I share my biggest lessons learned about being the most powerful version of yourself and interact with the Knowledge for Men community live. To attend the next live event, go to kfmlive.com. Again, that's kfmlive.com. Hope to see you there and have a conversation with you. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Govindh Jayaraman, the author of The Paper Napkin Wisdom. Some are calling him a modern-day Napoleon Hill for his passion in inspiring people to change the world. Govindh, happy to have you here.
Hey, Andrew, great to be here. Thank you.
All right, and Govindh, we start off every show with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that the guest has lived by that's helped them on their journey. So share with us what you got and what that means to you.
Yeah, I actually used this one in the book. It's a great one from Steve Jobs, and he quoted it during his most famous speech, his Stanford commencement address. And he says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you just have to trust that the dot will somehow connect in your future."
Yeah, I really like that one. How has that played a role on your journey?
Well, I think it really actually tells the story of Paper Napkin Wisdom. I mean, what happened for me is there was a point in my entrepreneurial journey, and I own a number of companies, where the market's inverted, cash flow went away, and I found myself $1 million in debt and my back against the wall, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, I just run out of options completely. And as part of a really well-connected entrepreneur circle through the Entrepreneurs Organization, I'd met and spoken with some amazing and famous entrepreneurs, names that are well known to a lot of people. And so I thought, hey, you know, what would be neat is if I could go around and meet with them or talk to them, and somehow they'd give me this wisdom, this pearl of wisdom that will change my life. They'll give me a magic wand that I can wave over my business and life, and everything would be better. And you know, that's where I came up with this idea that if I could get them to share these pearls of wisdom, this one thing that made them really successful with me on a simple paper napkin, then what could happen? Well, the change didn't happen the way I wanted. I didn't find that magic wand. What I ended up with was the ability to build my own wand, like build my own success, my own solution to the problem. And those were the dots. You know, these napkins became the dots looking backwards.
Okay, so you went on this tour, it sounds like, of interviewing, what was it, dozens or hundreds of entrepreneurs? How many people did you interview for the book?
Well, over time, I collected over 1,000 paper napkins, interviewed more than 200 people, and in the book, I used 52 of them, the best sort of line up. And what was amazing about it, Andrew, was that the dots just lined up. You know, if you talk to one person about their success, and this is the way it works for most of us, most entrepreneurs really have one big success. And Zuckerberg was probably the most honest about it when he was quoted publicly saying on his decision not to sell Facebook, "I'm afraid I'll never come up with an idea as good." And I think that many times we're all in that situation. We have one big win, and we replicate the model around that win for other ones. And some do it really well, like Richard Branson and Elon Musk and others just sort of settle in that one zone where they just do this one thing. I had everybody talk about success. To them, the steps they took to success or the way they prioritized things in their lives kind of seemed nebulous, like kind of cryptic to them. It was a code. And they had paper napkins or pearls of wisdom that were really profound, but didn't tell the whole story by themselves. But after I collected, 1,000 napkins, did the hundreds of interviews, it was almost like all those voices were talking about the same thing in their own ways, in the same words almost, but in different voices. It was incredible. And those were the dots that I could only connect when looking back at it. Like, you couldn't see it until I got perspective on it.
Yeah, I think we're all wondering, what is the wisdom that it just kept coming up over and over again that led to the success of these guys you interviewed?
There were 5 steps in how they prioritize things. But before that, there was a guideline. I call this the take action process. This was 5 guidelines that they followed religiously when they were in their periods of greatest momentum, greatest acceleration, when they were making the most impact. They did things with these 5 guidelines in mind. All right, so number 1, they recognized that as ADD as they were, as distracted and passionate people they were, as they were all over the map, when they did amazing things, they understood that multitasking was for computers and not for them, and not for leaders, not for entrepreneurs. And there's science behind it. 80% of your brain can focus on one thing at a time. When you split and start to multitask, it's 10% and 10% on the other. So we only get to use, 6 or 8% of our brain to start off with. And these people understood that when you focus on one activity, you get 80% of that little percentage on one activity. So just by that alone, that was an 8x ROI. The second thing they understood as a result was that at any given point, there was no such thing as priorities, just priority. One thing that made everything else either unnecessary or irrelevant. Think about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your activities drive 80% of your results. Well, what happens if you just got rid of not just the other 80%, but got it right down to just the one priority, the most important thing that needed to get done right then, and what would have the biggest, highest payoff there? Number 3, they recognized that they needed to change the way they look at the world, so the world that they looked at changes. And it's all about bottlenecks. Bottlenecks are at the top. And if we think about our human body as a bottleneck, as a bottle, the top is our head. And that's the constraint. So when we change the way we look at the world we look at changes. Everything changes when we change our perspective. Truth changes. Everything changes. So they were deliberate about finding a perspective where actually dangers were opportunities. Challenges were actually advantages. Weaknesses were actually strengths. And they were deliberate about that all the time, about having a perspective that allowed them to see opportunity and abundance everywhere they looked. Number 4 was that if you couldn't explain it simply, you didn't understand it well enough. So think about that for a second. All of these people took the very complicated concepts that they have, and there's all kinds of service delivery issues with, Virgin and all these other companies. These are complicated companies, but they boiled it down to something simple. There was complexity that had to work through in order to get there. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, I wouldn't give a fig for simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my right arm for the simplicity on the other side. And they always went for the simplicity on the other side. They always worked through the complexity and delivered a simple solution. So, the first step's just, again, to recap, multitasking is for computers, not leaders. No such thing as priorities, just priority, the one thing that you have to do. The truth about bottlenecks being at the top, so they have to change the way they looked at things. And then understanding that you have to express things simply led to number 5. And this was really profound. They also understood that the pen is mightier than the sword, but accountability is even stronger. And every one of them, every single one, had an accountability group to which they volunteered to be accountable to. Now, these are really successful entrepreneurs that really don't have to be accountable to anybody. And it's all based on, again, a simple truth. Research has shown that, and Andrew, you'll agree with me, people with goals are more successful than people without, right?
Right. That's
right. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
But people who have goals and they write them down are even more successful. And there's an ROI calc they've done. They've studied graduate students. They did a big sample of graduate students. They said, okay, there's a group that's just going to have goals, a group that's going to have goals and write them down. And the group that had goals and wrote them down were 36.7% more successful at completing those goals than the people who just had goals. That's a pretty good ROI. But it got much better. It almost doubled, more than doubled, when people had goals and volunteered to provide weekly progress reports to a group of peers. That group went to 76.7% more successful. So if you just assume that everybody in the business world is having goals and writing them down, if you take that as a core assumption, and you only look for the benefit of ROI around just the first one, the first of the take action steps, and the 5th, you get a 16 times better ROI on time. And every one of these people understand that their time is way more valuable than money. Money you can earn back. I mean, I'm evidence of that. I lost a lot of money and I earned it back. But time is something that's lost forever.
Yeah, yeah. And not only just in business this works, I mean, especially in your health, going to the gym, having that accountability partner in all aspects of your life, writing down the goal, having some sort of accountability system, and even like penalties if not achieving the goal or not showing up or not doing what you said you were going to do, things like that.
Yeah, and let's put it this way, Andrew, for you, if you made a commitment, if you said, hey, I'm going to meet, you call a good friend of yours and you say, I'm going to meet you at a certain time in a certain place, there's no skin in the game. But if you say that to a peer, a friend, an equal, and you don't show up, there's a huge weight. There's a huge amount of momentum that you create the moment you look someone in the eye that you care about and that cares about you and says, I'm going to do something. That's the value of volunteering accountability to a group of peers. This is not a group of superiors. And in many cases, when you're talking about these entrepreneurs that I'm talking about, they don't have superiors. They're not accountable to anyone by necessity, but by volunteering for it. That's a powerful, powerful shift in the dynamic, right? Putting your hand up and saying, I will be accountable to you. That's amazing. And those were the guidelines. There was another 5-step process by which they organize their priorities that we can get into next. But with all of them and with everything, they use this. And you're absolutely right about this, Andrew. These guidelines, this take action process works in everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're a student, a teacher, if you're stay at home for whatever reason, it doesn't matter where you are in life. These 5 steps work.
Yeah. I see this process helping someone who is getting started, but also someone who's already achieved a level of success where we often see, and I'm sure you've seen this, you've interviewed so many guys and women where they've reached a certain level of success and they lose that hunger, they lose that drive, that momentum that got them to where they were. And they kind of just think like they got it. Like they don't need accountability anymore. Like they're at the top, they're above everyone. There's no one at their level. And maybe you can elaborate on this, but maybe this might resonate with your own story, but maybe this is the cause of what can cause someone to, their empire to crumble.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. And that's where the actual 5-step plan comes in, which is how do you organize your priorities? Because in step 1, which I call your secret weapon, is that all the people I interviewed spoke about when they organized their priorities, they started with their secret weapon. Think about that, the soft stuff. It's your mindset, where you go to embrace resilience, where resilience comes from, where the stand back up after you've been knocked down comes from. And one of them is really poignant to your point right now, Andrew, and that's from Rory Vaden. He said, success is never earned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every day. I mean, that's a really powerful reminder. If your head's not in the game and if you don't understand that today starts fresh, which is great, right? I mean, every day, you're only as good as your next speech. Today is everything. Right now, this moment that you and I have together, Andrew, and everybody listening, this is the important thing right now. What are we going to get out of it? What intention are we going to put into this opportunity to max out?
Yeah, this requires one to be present. I get caught up in this, but where I get very excited about what I'm going to do this year. Like, oh, this event, this book, like I get really excited with goals, and I really love strategy and building out strategy. And that's important. That's really important to do. But there's a time when, hey, you got it on paper already. It's not going anywhere. It's now time to sit down and make that happen and come back to the present moment and get out of living in the future and just do the work, which is what we often procrastinate on.
Yeah, and there's no shortcut for that. I mean, every shortcut's really a long cut in disguise. It's just we need to do the work. No one ran a marathon by getting people to carry them across that distance. You run the marathon one step at a time. You run any distance one step at a time. Nobody can help you with that. They can cheer you on from the sidelines, but you've got to do the run. And it's like that with everything else. All our contributors to Paper Napkin Wisdom really learned that they needed consistent maintenance of this foundation, their secret weapon, so they can continue through the other steps. And it all starts with them. It all starts with building that. And the more you build that mindset, the more you build your secret weapon, the more discipline you have there, the further you go.
And by secret weapon, are you referring to the person's genius, like what they're naturally gifted at, or?
No, this is the sense of resilience, the commitment to their belief system.
Okay.
This is step one of the 5-step plan.
Okay, got
for
it.
life and business success. Right?
Okay, go on, yeah.
So step two, once you've worked on that, and I want you to picture for a second a wheel, right? And step one is the first sixth of the wheel at the top, right? And step two then becomes designing your path. So once these successful entrepreneurs had built on their mindset, had built a sense of resilience, a commitment to the belief that they had, their core belief, they actually developed a crystal clear sense of exactly not just where they wanted to go. I mean, everybody gets this idea that you got to have a vision, you got to have a goal, you got to have a clear sense of that objective, but it goes deeper than that. These people understood the twists, the turns, the preparation that was going to be necessary for the journey, and I call that designing their path. So step two is designing your path. You need to understand all the necessary parts of the journey, the detours along the way, the things that you need to do not only to succeed in the journey, but to thrive in the journey. Successful entrepreneurs had a measurable advantage in understanding how they were going to do something as opposed to just what they were going to do. So think about that clarity of path being step number two.
Yeah, yeah. And it can be relieving to know what's happening right now and then also in the future. Just to know, look, I got this plan. I just got to follow it day by day and step by step, week by week, month by month, things are going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's step number three. You nailed it right there, Andrew. It's step number three is your playbook. How do you measure your progress along the path? How do you measure the step by step, the play by play? What are the system, structure, and dashboard that you use to measure your progress? How do you inspect what you expect? How do you actually collaborate with others and know that this collaboration is moving forward? And how quickly do you do it? It's not about being controlling. It's not about being a control freak. It's about understanding the roadblocks that can arise with the process and having a commitment to improvement, but recognizing them quickly. Right? Because roadblocks actually teach you to jump higher, teach you to prepare for the obstacles ahead. But understanding the playbook allows others to play by the same rules, allows others to join you in the journey, which goes to step number four, which is our key players. Right? Now, this is something that we kind of get wrong as entrepreneurs, I think, and I did too. Oh, I'm just going to get this one person who's going to fix all my problems. If I could just find that great salesperson, I wouldn't have any sales problems. But because I hadn't taken care of my secret weapon, my path, or my playbook, I couldn't keep and retain those people. They left me as quickly as they came. Right? All of my key players in my life were my key players by default. My family, my friends, my neighbors, the people who actually happened into my company and stick around for a little while. But none of it was by design. And A players will join your company or join the company of you, just being with you, and leave you if you don't rise to their game, if you don't communicate in a way that shows them that not only are you making progress, but so are they in your company. And I mean company in the sense of presence, as a friend, as a compatriot, as much as I mean presence as a company, like an entrepreneurial journey. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah. What are some things that, from interviews you've done, what are things that guys can do to stay on top of their game, especially at a point when maybe you're hiring people who are at a higher level than you?
There's a great quote I love to repeat, that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
And how great would it be to be in a company where you were definitely not the smartest person? And I can tell you in my company now, I'm not the smartest person at organization. I'm not the smartest person at project management. I'm not the smartest person in software development. I've got great people who do that. So one of the great pieces of paper napkin wisdoms was hire great people and get out of their way. Support them. Right? Be a supportive leader that aligns people around core values and the path, and showing people really materially, this is where we could go. Now, being vulnerable enough, though, Andrew, to say, Okay, so how are we going to get there? And waiting for the answers to come from your room, right? Let's figure this out together may actually be the most powerful phrase in the arsenal of an entrepreneurial leader. I don't know the answer, but let's figure it out together, right?
Yeah,
I think groundbreaking.
I think that's hard for not just any leader, but even just a man to do, just to admit vulnerability that look, I don't have the answer, in reaching out and putting together the team, or even in your relationship, in other aspects of your life, for a man just to reach out. And I think that vulnerability thing is tough to do.
Oh man, is it ever? Andrew, I mean, I had this problem, hugely had this problem. You know, I thought that being a man meant, you know, being the first one to charge down the hill, flags unfurled, weapons drawn.
Like Gladiator or something.
Like Gladiator, screaming into battle.
Right.
I mean, I thought that's what I needed to be. Like, I mean, to be a big, strong man, that's what I need to do all the time. But you can't do that without troops behind you. How do you get them there? But let them know that you need them. You know, people always talk about authenticity, right? Authentic leadership, and they talk about all this stuff. And I struggled with this for a long time, because people would say I wasn't being authentic when I would do those things that I thought a leader needed to do, right? Stand in front of your troops and defend them. When I was scared, and I was just scared, and I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And so what happened after the battle would die, those troops would leave with no loyalty to me, because they sniffed out that I was being unauthentic. People can tell when you're not telling the truth. And people could tell when I was not telling the truth. That was the bottom line. I was hiding it from no one. No one. They could sniff it out. But vulnerability, right? Vulnerability actually shows you that you are courageous.
Yeah.
You're courageous in a way that they don't understand all the time. And that shows them the way.
And it's human. I think that's just, we can connect with humans, not people who have no flaws at all, no imperfections. Like, imperfections are gifts.
They're great gifts. And what makes us weak is actually what makes us strong. Those things that we're not good at are actually our secret, you know, like our superpowers in disguise, right? And we need to understand that. We need to really let people know. You know, there's one of the great paper napkins that I got was also about leaders. We all have luggage. The key is to have find people to help us unpack. And leaders, especially difficult for us to do this, you know, saying, hey, I need help with this. I don't know how to do this. But when you do that, an uncannily amazing thing happens. When you have the courage to show up, right? When you show up, courage shows up. When you show vulnerability, people give you the help you actually need, as opposed to stuff that you might want, which is way, way, way better. Yeah. And that takes us to the step 5. And the step 5, and this was the consensus, 1,000 paper napkins, hundreds of interviews, that the primary role of the leader in any team, this is sports team, this is a group of friends, this is anything, the primary role of the leader of any team is to be the heart, be the pulse. It has a responsibility and authority to maintain the pulse, the predictable beat by which everything operates to succeed, right? So think about that in a company as being the communication rhythms, the accountability, the support, the rhythm for professional and personal development, the rhythm for how people get recognition in the organization, the rhythm for how power runs in the organization. And when they do that, predictable leadership yields predictable success and predictable results. Predictability is the number one measure in predicting a leader's success. The highly predictable leader is always the most successful leader. You know, discipline, the most successful people have the most discipline, the most ability to say no. So think about it this way. Every great yes must be defended by 1,000 no's to stay on point, to stay in the zone and in the lane. And that becomes the guiding light for the organization.
Can you elaborate on that point? I think that's really a big one there.
Well, for all of us, you know, when we say yes to something, and I'll give you a simple one, right?
Okay.
Andrew, I say, yes, this is the year that I'm going to be the healthiest version of myself. And I've made that decision that this year I'm going to get super healthy. I want a single digit body fat percentage, and that's a lofty goal for me. But let's say that's what we want to do. Well, then that single yes, the thing that I've said yes to, must be defended by me saying no to a number of things. No to not getting enough rest, right? Rest is a number one leading indicator of getting healthy, right? Not getting enough hydration. I have to say no to taking it easy on hydration and diet. I have to say no to giving way to laziness and get to the gym. I have to say no to all those bad foods because I can outrun a lot of things, but I can't outrun my mouth, right? So that's what I mean by every great yes is defended by 1,000 no's. Yeah. How are you going to defend your no, your yes?
Yeah,
right?
I really like that. Yeah.
So that's the heart, and then here's the bonus prize. You get those 5 steps right. The bonus step is a life by design, and for entrepreneurs that are listening, it's a business by design, right? So it's easy for us, right? When we look at successful entrepreneurs, and here's the ripoff. Here's the piece that I think we all get wrong. We look at successful entrepreneurs, and they've got the this and the that and the car and the plane maybe and the penthouse apartment and the corner office, and we say, wow, I want those things. But that was the design. That's the outcome. That's the stuff that people get after building the first 5 steps. And people don't know that. Right? Nowhere is it this. No one tells them that you got to go through these 5 steps and then you get that. You can get that by design, but it's the journey and the strength with which you go through the 5 steps that you can get the life and business by design. And the more design you want, you just go back through the wheel, starting at number 1. Starting out your secret weapon. You build in more discipline, more structure, more personal commitment. Then you move into a better path. Just top grade your path a little bit. Then move up to your playbook and build a slightly better playbook. A slightly better team around you will come and you'll attract them. Build more heart. Give yourself more in service to those people around you. And you get a little more design and a little more and a little more. And that's how all these people, these successful entrepreneurs built this amazing thing around them. And what happened for me is as I went through the process, I lost 100 pounds. I paid off millions of dollars in debt, I should say. I restored my relationship with my family, which I was lying about. I was lying to them about how much I was struggling. I was spending a ridiculous amount of time away from my children, not really connecting, not being present when I was there. And I became a much better father through it. And then in terms of a leader in my company, I was avoiding everybody that I was working with. I didn't really like them. And now I've got surrounded by a group of people that when I leave the office, I miss them. When I come back, I can't wait to see them. That's a great gift. That's a life by design. And that's what comes out of this 5-step process.
Yeah, your story is very inspiring. It's really touching me, and I know my listeners are really excited to hear this and are getting a ton of value from this. How do you keep it going? Like, some guys are listening to this like, I'm in. I'm sold. This is good. But come March, June, July, like, how do you maintain that consistent progress with these steps?
What I wanted to do, a lot of people go out there and tell a story about their lives and they say, hey, that should inspire people on to greatness. But I took a different approach because especially to address what you just said, Andrew. So I wrote the book, Paper Napkin Wisdom, precisely to address that. It's actually 52 napkins organized in the 5-step process with the bonus price of life and business by design that allows people to go on a year-long journey. And here's one of the things that you said earlier on, and I didn't really hit at the time, but let's go back to it. You talked about your year-long goals and your year-long objectives. One of the things that we tend to do, and it tends to get us discouraged, especially as men, sometimes we beat ourselves up so much, right, around ego. And we overestimate what we can do in a month, but underestimate what we can do in a year. Time is something that we just sort of screw up on. And when we screw up on time, we use it as a stick to beat ourselves with. And then there's a whole group of people out there that say, hey, all your goals have to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timed. But that time becomes this anvil around our necks. I missed that goal by that time. That way the whole year is off, right? But that's not the way it works. We have to set deadlines. We have to motivate ourselves around dates and times. But really, it's more important just to keep going. Keep going. Surround yourself with people who believe in you and keep going. And here's what I've been doing. This year, I was lucky enough to go through this journey, meet all these amazing people, write this book with Jack Daly as a co-author. And Jack is one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the world, building 3 several $100 million companies from zero and exiting them. And now he's a world famous sales coach. I mean, surrounding myself changed the people that I surrounded myself with in the process. And when I wrote this book, I realized how valuable it was. And I'm actually going back through it and doing it again. So anybody who's doing this, I'd say join me on this journey this year. Every week, I'm going to do another chapter in the book and do it out loud. Why don't you join me? Do it with me. We can all do it together. And then we can share how we grow. We can support each other through that journey.
Yeah, that's good. And thank you for sharing that. In this series of all these interviews you've done, and I've done it over 250 interviews now, I do find it hard to find, even just in my real in-person life, I do find it hard to find a man who's just got it, everything dialed down. I can find guys who are worth 7, 8, 9 figures. I can also find guys who are broke but have the most amazing relationship ever. I can find guys who are in the best shape of their lives, or not their lives, just in the best shape of what like a human can do with their body, but they're broke or they're single. And like, I do find it difficult to find a guy who's just got, life very dialed down. And have you found that to be similar on your journey?
Yeah, I did before getting on this ride. And what's interesting to me is they're there. And there are more of them than you think. I mean, the man who wrote the preface to the book was my inspiration for this. His name's Warren Rustand. He's built several companies into the billion-dollar status, and he's sold them, and he's done very well. He's well-known. He's been more successful at any one thing than I've done at anything, at everything. The guy's incredible. I mean, he was a former NBA athlete, left the NBA to become a White House fellow, and that was all before he was out of his mid-20s. So incredible person, incredible human being, incredible leader, and incredible entrepreneur. And when he tells the story of his life, many times people ask him, Warren, what would you like to be remembered by? And he doesn't flinch, doesn't hesitate, and says that I love my family. And he's surrounded by his family. He's got a family that defies explanation in terms of how close they are. All his children live within a 10-minute ride of his house. Many of them live on his family property. He's got dozens of grandchildren. I happened to be in Tucson this summer to see him win the Father of the Year award down there. His clan numbers in the 30s around him. And he's affectionate and intimate with all of them as a grandfather and father. Truly incredible man. And what's amazing to me is in allowing me to change and break the bottleneck that these people didn't exist, it allowed me to recognize how many of them there were and how intentional they were and how quiet they were about what they did. But more incredibly, how openly they shared it with everyone. I mean, Jack Daly is so wildly successful. He had no reason to go on this journey with me. He very much lives a life by design. He's got all of those pieces together. Great relationship with his children and grandchildren. He travels the world, does exactly what he wants to do in life, has built several successful companies, lives in a storybook part of the world in California, and all the while is so generous with his time to be of service of people around him. It's incredible, right? These people are out there, and there's more of them than you think, and it's possible for you and I to be those people too.
Yeah, I definitely know they're out there. One that I was following was Richard Branson. I mean, he's got it. He's got a great, just his life is pretty dialed down. Anthony Robbins, other guys, I know they're out there. And even it takes, I think, a lifetime to really build. All of those guys that I do find that are in that area are considerably much older. It's not like a guy's 25 and he's just got everything. It takes time and wisdom. And you've gone on this journey and you've shared so many great lessons with us here today. I think it's really going to help guys get there much faster.
So I ultimately believe that small changes make a big difference, and together we change the world.
Yeah.
And I think that when you think about Richard Branson and Tony Robbins and all the other names that you can possibly think of that fit into this category, what you'd find is great simplicity in their lives. Right? They live a life of less, not more. They're really highly focused on what drives them and what drives success for them. They are really careful about with whom they spend their time and how. And there's so much discipline in their daily routine that most of us wouldn't even be able to survive it. I mean, that's how structure they have around certain things.
Yeah.
They've learned that structure sets them free. With that structure, they've allowed to build themselves enormous freedom. And if you doubt that for a second, if you say, oh, no, wait a minute, Richard Branson's a really wild child. Well, think about it. How much structure do you think it takes that you have to live in an island away from everyone? And anyone who gets to that island has to meet certain criteria. Think about that for a second. How much are you being careful about what energy is around you when that's the way you live your life?
Yeah, that's right. And considering too that, if we're talking about Branson or even Tony Robbins, I mean, Richard Branson dropped out of high school. He started his first business at 15 years old, Virgin Records. And we have to remember, he's put in his time, and he has gone through divorces, and it's not like it was all sunshine and rainbows right from the get-go. And same with Tony Robbins. I mean, he's gone through divorces of his own, and he started when he was, I think, 17 years old.
Absolutely. And you're right. They put their time in, and both of them will say, there's no shortcut.
Right.
There are no shortcuts. You just got to do the stuff. And when Richard Branson, I mean, the story that a lot of people don't understand is that Richard Branson was building Virgin, living on a houseboat, not even realizing what he'd built because he was so immersed in the passion of creation that he had no clue what the value was, right? That's not why he did it. He did it because it was him. He was pulling out of himself what was already there and bringing it into the world, right? Yeah. And if you've ever seen Tony Robbins speak, he's just sharing his soul.
Yeah.
There's no filter around it. He's vulnerable and he's open and he talks about all those things. And all of those things are amazing because it's made him the person who he is. He's been able to learn publicly along that journey. Truly tremendous. And he talks about preparation. When he wrote the book that he recently did about money,
yeah,
he talks about the unbelievable amount of preparation that he went into with every interview. It's truly astounding. That's what it takes. But if we're not willing to give ourselves to any one thing like that, that's okay, because that's single-mindedness. But whatever it is that we're willing to give ourselves to, we have to feel like if we take the take action process, the 5 steps, right? Multitasking, one priority, change the way you look at the world, break that bottleneck, explain it simply, and align yourself with an accountability group to whom you're reporting your progress every single week, you can do great things. You'll be 16 times better on ROI on time than everyone else around you right away. Boom, done. You're there. Then align your priorities around your secret weapon, designing your path, your playbook, your key players, and the heart, and you get to build a life and business by design. Whatever that is for you. I promise you, if you go on this journey with me for the next year, you'll blow yourself away.
This is really good. Let's go deeper. Are you ready for the knowledge round, Jovan?
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
All right.
I'm a little nervous about this. You said fire round. I don't know what
knowledge round.
I'm bracing myself now.
Get ready. Don't worry. If you're tired of living the mundane day-to-day and just the daily grind and want to experience more joy and fulfillment in your life, then check out my live weekly talks and open Q&A with the community where I share my biggest insights on becoming the most powerful version of yourself to rise above mediocrity and create the life you desire. Register for the next upcoming event at kfmlive.com. Again, that's kfmlive.com. And hurry up before all the spots are taken. Hope to see you there. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. So what I like about you is this: I'm getting a strong sense of purpose. And you got this direction, you're going in that direction. It's great. And I think it's very empowering. And just the energy, even just coming from your voice, I can feel it. What advice would you give to someone now who doesn't have that? And they're really feeling lost and unsure of what they should do next, unsure of their purpose.
I've been there too. And the time for me, for that person, for that man listening right now, that person listening right now, I'd say, remind yourself of the people that you love, the people you care about. If you feel really alone, when I felt the greatest lack of purpose is when I felt the most alone personally. And it was because I totally isolated myself and failed to recognize the people around me that cared about me. So allow people to care about you. Allow yourself to be hugged. Allow yourself to be loved, and purpose will flow.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one too for guys when you say that. Allow yourself to be open and hugged and loved, and it can be something that we struggle with.
And I mean, I really struggled with this. I built a company early on that was doing pretty well, and I kind of just isolated myself and almost ran away from it. You know, found every excuse not to go into the office, found every excuse to not do things and not surround myself with people. And then I surround myself with the wrong people, you know, the people who would enable me to do bad things, you know. But all of that procrastination, right? Procrastination is what we use to cover up the fact that we're lacking courage, you know. But courage doesn't show up until you show up. And I learned that the hard way, right? Procrastination is a form of cowardice. Right, so you could do this, and it's really hard. This is probably the hardest. I mean, Andrew, you said this off the top. This is hard for us. This is really hard. But I'll promise you this: if you take a little step, just a little step, and let someone care about you, it changes everything. And notice that I said, don't care about someone else, because that's easier. But let someone actually care about you. That's much harder.
Yeah. Would you say this was something that was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Oh, yeah, for a long time. A long time. And, you know, part of it was me lying to myself. Part of it was me trying to be something so that I could have the adoration of people around me. Hey, if I do these things, I'll have this result, and then I'll have the effect I want to have on people around me. And I'll be the person I want to be, right? If I do these things, I'll have this thing which will make me this thing. And I'll be something better. But that's not how it works. You know, how it works is actually the other way around. It's be yourself. Be your most authentic, pure self. Do the things that are epically aligned with that. And you'll just have the impact you want. Everything will just flow. And it sounds crazy. So do it a little ways. You know, meet me halfway. Do it a little bit. But be the person you were meant to be. And I'm going to say this, and I really mean this. You know, everybody needs to know that they're an A player, that they're special and they're important. Everyone needs to know that. You need to feel that, but you don't feel that by giving that to other people. You feel that by letting people care about you. And that's harder.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think this is really hitting home for the guys. I mean, multiple times. You're hitting home runs here. This is great. So now on this journey, you know, one of your questions you probably ask all of your guests, which is what I ask all my guests. I'm about to ask you, what books have really helped you on your journey? And so I'm sure you've read a ton of books. What would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey?
Yeah, you know, I love this question. It's a great question. Not one I asked, though, on my podcast, Andrew, but I might rip you off here. I don't ask it, you know, because for me, it's not about quantity in books. It's about quality, and it's about mastery. So I will often read the same book over and over again because I feel like I'm missing something. And a recent experience of that is Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, which I think is my favorite book. If I was going to say, what's your favorite book? That's my favorite book. And I've been reading it and rereading it over and over again, mostly because, you know, honestly, writing a book is kind of a crazy practice. Like it takes so much time, so much energy, so many resources. And, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a company. I have kids. I have an amazing wife. I mean, I have this great life. And I took time from all of those things to write this book. And when I did that, I was kind of feeling really selfish and like I missed something. Like, what did I miss? I felt in some ways great when it was done, and in some ways really bad, like really selfish bad, that I'd taken away time from everyone else. And then I happened upon an Audible copy of Think and Grow Rich, which I was listening, and it's such a cool copy because it's got actual interviews with Napoleon Hill interspersed amongst the intros and outros to each of the chapters. Amazing. It's just really cool. So Napoleon Hill tells a story as an intro to one of the chapters. And he talks about how he wrote Think and Grow Rich. And the story he tells is one I've never heard before. So if you've got a couple seconds, I'll just go through it real fast.
Yeah, go ahead. Definitely.
All right. So FDR has him come in as a member of his staff in the White House. And Napoleon is there after a couple of weeks. He hasn't gotten a paycheck, and no one's actually talked to him about his role. And the president actually walks up and says, Napoleon, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. How exactly are we paying you for your time here? And he says, Mr. President, I've been meaning to ask you about that myself. And he's telling the story, so he says it in this really amazing way. He goes through the whole thing and he says, well, when he worked for FDR, when he was the president of the Naval Secretary, he volunteered his time. When he was governor of New York, again, he volunteered his time. And here again, he would volunteer his time. But apparently you can't do that in the White House. You have to be on the payroll in order to be there. So he says, if you insist upon putting me on the payroll, put me on at $1 per year. So the president protests a little bit and fights with him, but eventually gives in, gives him his $1 a year payroll. But he says there's one condition, that I'm allowed to bring a typewriter to the White House, and when I'm not in service of the president or your cabinet, I can do anything I want. And he goes, sure, no problem. So in that year, he wrote 5 manuscripts. 5. 3 years later, he goes back and reads all 5 of them, realizes only one of them is any good, and hands it to a publisher. The publisher says, this is amazing. What would you like me to do with this, Napoleon? You're not a well-known author. He goes, well, why don't you give it to the rest of your staff and have them read it too? They all read it and unanimously agreed that they should publish this right away and put a lot of resources into it, even though he was a relative unknown. And that book was Think and Grow Rich. And some time later, after its massive success worldwide, the publisher asked him, how did you come upon this book? How did you actually come to write this? And he said, I've thought a lot about that a lot. And ultimately, this was the book I needed. I needed to do this for me to keep my mindset in a positive place when I was in a very dark place. I needed to know that my mindset could change the world around me, that my mindset could be the positive ingredient that I needed to not only change my own situation, but the world. How amazing is that? So it sort of vindicated me when I heard that, and it was like I felt a lot better about the book and all the time I'd spent, because this was the book I needed.
And this podcast was for me when I just wanted to meet guys like you when I first started.
Isn't that cool? And look how huge it is. Like, Andrew, look what you created as a phenomenon. You did this for you. And here's the bottom line, guys. Guys, if you're listening, write this down. Be the person you need in the world when you most needed it. Be that. That's the most authentic place to be, right? When you're that person that you needed in the world, man, that's exponential. And it might be the only thing in the world that is. That's my number 1 book.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, checking that out. Now, imagine, Joven, you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self, and you got to sit down with 25-year-old Joven, and you could tell him something. Like, what would you tell him? What would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I'd tell him, well, I was really arrogant. And I was arrogant because I was covering up how scared I was. And every time I got scared, every time I didn't know the answer, I'd cover it up with bravado and arrogance. And I'd tell the 28-year-old version of myself that it was okay to be wrong. It was okay to fail. In fact, fail more. Fail cheap, fail fast. Fail is okay. And I tell him that I think I'd tell him just that it was okay. Everything was going to be okay. And I didn't need to worry about how people saw me, but I had to worry about who I was. And I'd tell him that other thing about, be the person you needed. For a long time, the best thing I ever did was in school. 25 years ago, in fact, Andrew's kind of neat that today we're having this interview. 25 years ago, next week, I started a club with a group of students at the University of Ottawa's Entrepreneurs Club. It's 25 years old now. It's helped hundreds of people. And that's most similar to what I'm doing in the world today now. Connecting people with mentors who could help shape their lives. It was what I did back then. And I kind of just thought that I couldn't make a life doing that. And I didn't do it anymore. I left the club and I thought I'd done my piece. But really, that's been everything to me. And when I go back to that place, even in my own company, if I really think about when my people love being around me and love being successful, it's because I'm helping them pull in a future version of themselves. That's my job. My job is to unlock possibility for them. That's it.
Yeah. Would you say that's been very much your philosophy for life and success?
Yeah, absolutely. I've understood over time that my role is to be the gatekeeper of possibility and make sure that I shine a light on how great their lives could be, our life could be together in this company, what we can achieve together, where we could go, how we could get there. And when I'm focused on that zone, we do great things. And when I lose focus of that is usually when I'm scared and I'm insecure, and then it becomes about me. And it becomes a story that I'm telling myself that has no grounding in reality at all. Nothing. I've made up a story. And when I get lost in that story, and I got lost in that story a lot in my 20s. When I get lost in that story, then it's about what car I'm driving, who's on my arm, where I'm going, what I'm doing with my time, and who's seeing it. And right now, Facebook is so dangerous, right? Because it's fake book. It's the veneer of our lives.
Right. Yeah. And now it's like Instagram, and there's all these others.
Yeah. It's even like it's just a picture. It's a snapshot of what's going on. But really, the greatest intro to a speech I've ever heard by an entrepreneur started off like this: that we get trapped into thinking about the veneer of success that people have, but every successful entrepreneur owes it to pay forward to the failures, their setbacks, to every generation of entrepreneurs that follows them. And I think that we lose track of that. And now, that particular speech was followed up with 40 minutes of listening to how great I am, too. So, I mean, that guy missed big time. But, if we really think about that for everyone, for where we are, isn't it great? I mean, guys, isn't it great to be around someone who shares with us those times when they got back up? I mean, isn't that where we learn how to do it ourselves?
Yeah, that's very good. That's going to conclude the knowledge round there. Thank you so much for that. That was a big breath of just knowledge coming into us there. What's now exciting you today? What's really getting you out of bed in the morning now, today, in this year?
One of my companies is doing really well. We're about to launch a patented product to help physicians drive better ROI, so return on investment of time, energy, and resources. So that really jazzes me. And it jazzes me because, as we grow older, we have less doctors, but more of us. So they need to be more efficient, and we need to be able to afford them. So I think this company and this product is going to be really special, and really looking forward to launching it. We've been developing it for about 3 years, and so that's something that's special to me. And of course, this journey, the Paper Napkin Wisdom, the book on Amazon, the workshops that we're doing around the U.S. and Canada, that's what's jazzing me, because every single time we go into these rooms and we build these 5-step plans with people, it's helping to change the world, because these people are leaders. All the men and women who come into our workshop tell me later that they've unlocked parts of their lives that they didn't know were even available to them, because they took the 5-step process and made it theirs, and wrote down in their own way what they could do to drive success for them.
Yeah, really good. And Govindh, how can my audience follow up with you moving forward?
So first of all, you could find me. The podcast is papernapkinwisdom.com. It's on iTunes and Play Store, so you can find it there. The book is available on Amazon. Just search Paper Napkin Wisdom. It's the 5-step plan to life and business success. And lastly, if you have interest in attending a workshop or session, you can look for the workshop section on papernapkinwisdom.com.
All right, Govindh, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable here and all of your lessons from your journey. It's been really impactful. It's been an honor having you here on the show. I just want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I was honored to be here and have this conversation with you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.